6 manga, one of them I never finished choosing to leave. One of them I found out 5 years late by accident. And one of them is the only story I still have open on my phone right now, as we speak. Every manga I've ever picked up started the exact same way, not with curiosity, not with someone recommending it to me, with impatience. Something I was watching ended, and I could not wait to find out what happened next. That's it. That's the entire pattern behind every single manga on this list. And once I noticed it, I realized the list wasn't really about which stories are good. It's about which stories broke me first. Stick around for this one, because there's a genuinely good chance you've read at least one of these too. And I want to know if your version of this story ended the same way mine did. Vinland Saga started it. I watched the anime, got to the end of what was available, and had to wait about a year for season 2, a full year of checking release schedules, half forgetting about it, then remembering all over again with the same dumb hope that maybe it dropped early, and when season 2 finally ended, I hit the same wall again, except this time I didn't wait. I couldn't, so I opened the manga for the first time in my life, not because I was a manga reader, because I had never read one before and had no idea how. Reading manga is genuinely a different skill than watching anime. Panel order, pacing, how your eyes are supposed to move across a page, and figuring that out is a whole separate story I'm not getting into today. But Vinland Saga is the reason I know how to read manga at all. It broke my patience first, so it gets to be first on this list, and that pattern of impatience is going to repeat 5 more times on this list. But stick with me, because the last one on here is genuinely the strangest thing that's ever happened to me with a piece of media, and I promise it's worth the wait. One Punch Man came from the exact same impulse, same reason, same impatience, same inability to wait for more. I opened the manga expecting the same pull Vinland Saga gave me, and I got about halfway through the Hero Association arc, and then I just stopped. Not dramatically, not because something upset me. I just lost the thread, and the thread never came back. That's the honest version. Sometimes the impatience that gets you into a manga isn't strong enough to keep you in it once the initial hunger for what happens next gets satisfied by a few chapters. One Punch Man scratched the itch, and then the itch went away. One piece you already know if you watched my other video, straight out of the 6-month anime hiatus, straight into the manga same week the anime ended for me. And out of every manga on this list, it's the only one I'm still actively reading right now. Not the one I finished, not the one I dropped, the one still open on my screen as we speak. That matters, and I'll come back to why in a minute. Chainsaw Man is a weirder case. I started that one right after the Rizy arc movie dropped a while back. Rode straight off that high into the manga, fully expecting to blow through it the same way I did with Vinland Saga, and then partway through I lost interest and left it. I'm not telling you exactly where or why, because it edges right up against spoiler territory and I'm not doing that to you. What I will say is that this one didn't die from boredom the way One Punch Man did, it died from something else entirely. Something specific to the story itself. Make of that what you will. Hajime no Ippo might be the longest manga I've ever read. Full stop. I started after the anime finished, and I'm talking close to 1,000 chapters deep at this point. 1,000. That's not a binge, that's a relationship. A genuine years-long commitment I didn't fully sign up for on purpose. I'm still reading it, technically, except the newest chapter hasn't come out in months. So it's not dropped, it's not finished, it's just paused by forces completely outside my control. There's something almost funny about being the most committed to a story for the longest amount of time, out of every manga on this entire list, and still ending up stuck waiting anyway. The exact same feeling that got me into manga in the first place, just on a much bigger timescale now. And then there's Dragon Ball. This is the one I told you to stick around for, the strangest thing that's ever happened to me with a piece of media, because for years, I didn't even know there was anything left to read. Dragon Ball Super's anime ended, and in my head, that was it. Story over. Credits rolled, move on with your life. I didn't know the manga was quietly continuing the whole time. Chapter after chapter completely without me. 5 years passed before I found out there was more story sitting there waiting for me, fully unaware the entire time. When I finally heard about it and had the time, I started reading. 5 years late to my own manga. So look at that list again. Vinland Saga, the one that started everything. One Punch Man dropped from a loss of interest. One Piece, still going, the only one I haven't stopped. Chainsaw Man, dropped for a reason I won't say. Hajime, no Ippo, technically still active but stalled by real-world release delays. Dragon Ball, 5 years late without even knowing it existed. 6 manga. 6 completely different endings, if you can even call some of them endings at all. 1 finished nothing and started everything. 2 got abandoned mid-arc for reasons that have nothing to do with each other. 1 is being read in real time as we speak. 1 is frozen, waiting on someone else entirely. And 1 sat there for half a decade without me even knowing it was there to be waiting on. Here's the twist I didn't expect when I started noticing this pattern. I assumed the thing that determines whether you finish a story is the story itself. Good stories get finished, weaker ones get dropped. That's the obvious theory. But look at my list again. One Punch Man and Chainsaw Man are both objectively excellent, critically loved, massively popular manga. I didn't drop them because they were bad. I dropped them because something in my own life or attention shifted, and the story just wasn't there anymore when I looked back. Meanwhile, Hajime no Ippo isn't stalled because I lost interest. It's stalled because the actual author hasn't released a new chapter, a completely external reason that has nothing to do with the story's quality or my commitment to it. And Dragon Ball wasn't abandoned at all. I just genuinely didn't know it existed. The real determining factor was never quality. It was timing, attention, and circumstances, mostly outside my control. That's a strange thing to realize about something as simple as reading a manga. We like to tell ourselves clean stories about why we finish things and why we don't. I finished this because it was good, I dropped that because it got bad. But that's rarely the actual mechanism. Most of the time it's circumstantial. Life got busier. Something else grabbed your attention first. You genuinely didn't know there was more to consume. None of that has anything to do with whether the thing itself deserved to be finished. Here's where this stops being about manga completely. Think about the last thing you started and didn't finish. A book, a course, a project you were genuinely excited about at the start. I'd bet good money that in your head you've built a tidy explanation for why you stopped. Probably something like, it wasn't as good as I thought, or I just lost interest. But how much of that is actually true? And how much of it is just a comfortable story covering for the fact that something else in your life quietly took the spot that thing used to occupy? One Punch Man didn't get worse halfway through the Hero Association arc. My attention just moved somewhere else, and I built a tidy little explanation afterward to make the dropping feel like a decision instead of an accident. It's a much more comfortable story to tell yourself. Honestly, I decided this wasn't for me. Feels a lot better than I got distracted and never came back. Even when the second one is the truer one almost every time. We rewrite accidents into decisions because decisions feel like they were within our control, and accidents feel like admitting we weren't paying attention to our own lives. And on the other side of that same coin, One Piece is the one I'm still reading. And if I'm honest with myself, it's not necessarily because it's better written than everything else on this list. It's because the timing lined up. It caught me right off the back of a 6-month binge, at the exact moment my attention was most locked in, and it never had to compete with anything else grabbing my focus away from it. Being the one that's still going isn't a trophy for being the best story, it's a trophy for showing up at the right moment and never getting interrupted. So here's the actual question worth sitting with, more than any ranking of these 6 manga against each other. What's something you dropped that you've been quietly telling yourself wasn't good enough when the real reason might just be that life moved and you never circled back? And is there something still sitting there unfinished, not because you decided it deserved to be abandoned, but because nobody ever told you, the way nobody told me about Dragon Ball for 5 straight years, that there was still more waiting for you the whole time? If any of this hit close to home, tell me in the comments which one you're still meaning to go back to, and I'll see you in the next one.